A full breakdown of the Snyder Schauer town hall, who got the bounce there, plus the impact of big names on the campaign trail, and Detroit's bankruptcy rounding the corner. MiWeek starts right now.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta.
Hi there and welcome to MiWeek. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Christy McDonald. Well, it's the town hall that everyone is talking about with Governor Rick Snyder and challenger Mark Schauer. We will take a look at the key moments from Sunday's forum, the reaction, and how it is affecting the race. Plus, election 2014, President Obama heading to Michigan to campaign. But do big names really make a difference? We'll talk about that. And Detroit's bankruptcy close to an end, a final deal made. It is all coming up. But we do start off tonight with a look at the race for governor and the town hall forum. So let's bring in our contributors, Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's good to see you. All right, so we've had a couple of days to decompress from the big old town hall forum, and I'm going to ask you what the feedback you've received. I guess, Nolan, let me start with you.
Well, I mean, I think people were a little surprised at, how different a governor they saw standing up there. He was feistier, he was a little more aggressive, a little more combative, and he certainly was.
He got combative with you.
Yeah. He was a little angrier, perhaps, than we've ever seen Rick Snyder, and I think it worked for him in this setting. Steve Mitchell did a poll after the debate, and the people who watched it gave it to the governor by about a 40 to 27%, 23% margin. It was a pretty good margin for the governor in that.
All right, what's been the feedback from your vantage point, Stephen?
Well, I mean, I think people were surprised by the demeanor that the governor had because they haven't seen him like that a whole lot. But I think people were also, I've heard a lot of people say that they didn't know that much about Mark Schauer before, other than what they'd seen in commercials and things, and that they felt like they had a better sense of at least what he believes out of the debate. Now, I think that's a double-edged sword for him, because I've also heard people say, well, I didn't hear enough specifics about what he wants to do or how he plans to do it. But I think he's it made him a much more identifiable persona, a political persona, the debate did, and that's a plus for him in the sense that I think there weren't enough people who had an idea.
And he rallied his base, I think. If you think about the Democratic base, not real happy with Rick Snyder. There's a lot of Snyder haters in that base, and if you think of this election as a referendum on Snyder, Schauer's got to get those anti-Snyder votes very excited, because people, as Steve said, people don't know enough about him to get excited about Mark Schauer. But you've got to get them excited about voting against Rick Snyder if you're him. And I think he did a good job of that. He attacked, hit. And I think the people out there who are inclined not to like Rick Snyder, not to vote for Rick Snyder, were very excited and enthused about Schauer's performance. Now, whether that's enough to carry him over the top is a question.
I think it's interesting because anytime after these forums, everyone's like, all right, well, who do you think won? And it's so funny because I have friends on both sides, and all the Democrats, oh, well, Mark Schauer won, hands down. And then all of my Republican friends, oh, well, Rick Snyder, he totally took this one. I kind of felt that it was very, very close to almost a draw at one point, Stephen.
Well, and I mean, they had different burdens to meet, too. I mean, I think Rick Snyder is an incumbent who's very familiar, who has a record that he's trying to sort of shore up and defend. Mark Schauer is a relative unknown and needed this debate to sort of introduce himself. So I think they both accomplished what they needed to do inside that context and inside those measures. Did Mark Schauer? The question is, did Mark Schauer do enough to stop the current polling trend, which is leaning toward the governor and sort of pulling away? That was one of his burdens too, was to try to move that back the way it had been going for months until recently. And I don't know if he did that or not.
Well, if you look at the Mitchell poll again, independents in the audience went overwhelmingly with the governor. And
okay, so that's interesting. That's really the number I think that there is to look at.
Yeah, and that's where this race is. I mean, Republicans are going to stay home, Democrats are going to stay home with their candidate, and it's independents is always going to decide this race.
And the reason that independents will get to decide this race is because Democrats, the reason Rick Snyder won 4 years ago was because so many Democrats stayed home. More than 200,000 of them. If those people show up, he loses. Same thing here. If Mark Schauer can motivate those Democrats to come out and vote for, and of course vote for him, he wins the race. And that is part of the Democratic strategy here. Is that there's been a lot of focus on those 200,000 or so people who did not show up to vote 4 years ago. I'm not sure how they show up in polling. These were first-time voters in 2008. They showed up again in 2012. Are they considered likely voters who we go to when we are polling and asking about races, or are they completely outside of that? I think we won't know until November 4th how effective that effort has been.
Did the Town Hall Forum give us the answer to any of the questions that I think people have when they've been watching a lot of the campaign ads that you cannot avoid during every single commercial break on television in terms of talking topics? Education.
Well, I think the governor used his time in particular to refute a lot of the claims that have been made about his record, a lot of challenges to his record, particularly on on education spending. This $1 billion cut's been a centerpiece of Schauer's campaign. I thought the governor did a very good job of just bringing the numbers, saying this is what we were spending in 2011, this is what we're spending in 2014, and it's clearly more. It was interesting that Schauer never backed off of that, and even after the debate, all the fact checkers sort of agreed, as they have been, that we're spending more on education today. Still seeing these ads that he cut education spending. So
well, and the reason is that if you ask teachers, if you ask principals, people who work in school districts and in classrooms about what's happened to education over the last 4 years, they will tell you they are dealing with less. They are pulling more out of their pockets. They are going to parents to ask for more, and that's because of the way the governor has chosen to fund education.
It's not entirely, Steve. I mean, a whole lot of federal money, stimulus money, came out of the education budget during that same period.
That's also true, but at the same time, he cut
$500 million. It's a lot of money.
He cut $1 billion out of the foundation grant, put it into MIPSers, which. Great policy. I mean, I think there's no question that the underfunded pensions are one of the biggest problems we have in municipal government and in schools. But the reason that the Democrats have hammered that so hard is because that's how people feel. People really, if you talk to people in local school districts, they will all tell you.
But that money was coming out anyway. That money was either going to come from the state or it was going to come from the local districts.
The state could have made up.
That was never going to reach the classroom. And if you take a look at legacy costs, just as they ate up the city of Detroit, they're going to eat up the school districts.
I think the question for the governor was, why not do both? Mm-hmm. Why not plow money into MIPSers and maintain the foundation grant or make up for the loss at the federal level? There's been plenty of money that he's had to use for other purposes. Education was not one of them, and that is true, that he chose to spend that money in other ways.
We're sitting here awash of money. We can't find money to fix our deteriorating infrastructure. It's not like money's just simply pouring in.
Businesses are paying $1.8 billion less a year in taxes.
And as a result, we've got a growing economic base, a growing tax base. That'll pay off very quickly.
Well, so it comes down to priorities and where you want to put your money. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the what they talked about a little bit in education at the Town Hall Forum.
Charter schools were allowed to expand with no oversight. That was a big mistake by this governor. I wouldn't expect my opponent, with his record, to sign into law oversight of charter schools. I will do it. I will do it when I am governor.
They're not unregulated. There's authorizers behind them, and the Department of Education helps provide oversight. One thing I can tell you, though, is I think we need higher standards for all schools, both charters and traditional public schools. We need to raise that bar. We need to raise those standards.
All right, effective argument. I'm going to start with you first, Stephen, about the charter school debate.
I mean, I think there are a lot. I mean, certainly we have spent a lot of time at the Free Press talking about the lack of regulation over charter schools, the problems with charter schools staying open when they don't perform. I think the governor's answer here is as good as it can be. That look, let's raise standards for all schools. Schauer, of course, is more focused on hammering away at charter schools and certainly the for-profit schools. And I think there are a lot of people that are concerned about that. I mean, I think that probably landed well with a lot of people in the state who are unsure about how all that's working.
Schauer's carrying the MEA's water on this. If he were elected, I think charter schools would have a very difficult time staying open. I think most would wither away, eliminating an important choice a lot of parents have, particularly parents who are trapped in failing public school districts that Schauer and the MEA don't seem so concerned about raising their performance or raising their accountability. The governor mentioned at one point that he's giving charter schools less and public schools more. I think that was a bad answer. I mean, if you're going to expect these charter schools to innovate, and yet you're going to underfund them and saddle them with the same restrictive rules that traditional schools are under, I think you can't expect this experiment to be as successful as it should be. I would have loved to hear him say, hey, we're going to unshackle the innovation of charter schools and let them go.
You just gave him credit for what he was doing with MIPSers. That's how he's funding public schools more. Charter schools don't have unfunded liabilities. They don't have legacy costs.
In this conversation, they never get to the fact that in Detroit, for example, a charter school is spending about $7,100 per pupil, and a public school spending up to about $13,000. That's a huge, huge difference, and it's not all going in the retirement
Most
fund.
of it is going to fixed costs that charter schools don't have, which is unfunded liabilities, the capital costs that public schools have that a lot of charter schools don't. They're different in the way that they spend money. It's also true that charter schools, a lot of them spend less in the classroom as a result. I think that's a bad thing. I agree. We ought to be spending more in every classroom, charter and public. I'm not sure why that's
I don't think it's fair to ask charter school teachers who are not necessarily going to draw a pension, they're in 401k plans, to fund the pensions of other people.
Well, they're not.
They certainly are.
No, they're not.
They certainly are.
How are they doing that?
Because the money that would have gone into their schools are going into the public schools to pay these pension costs.
Because they're fixed costs. I mean, you can't just do away with them. How would you pay for it?
You cut the foundation grant for the charter schools to fund these pension costs, and these teachers aren't going to draw.
They cut the foundation
These people aren't going to draw
grant
pensions.
to all schools. Everybody got a foundation grant cut in the first year. That wasn't unique to charter schools.
It's been going up ever since, and charter schools have not kept pace.
All right, I'm going to bring it back a little bit to the town hall forum debate, and you can watch the town hall forum with Stephen and Nolan here every Thursday night. But let me bring it back to the debate and to the issue of Detroit. I thought it was a very interesting moment in the town hall with both Mark Schauer and Rick Snyder addressing what has happened in the city of Detroit, and Mark Schauer not saying that he wouldn't have done it the same way. Let's go ahead and take a look.
I'm not questioning whether the city of Detroit needed to go bankrupt, but I would have personally led rather than having an unelected, unaccountable person do it.
My goal is to have the emergency manager come in, do their job, get out, be done, and get it back to the community with good oversight, though, so it doesn't fall backwards. Stop and think. Have you ever thought you'd see Detroit as well poised for a bright future as you see today?
I thought that was interesting when Mark Schauer said, well, I would have led and just kind of would have done it. I'm not quite sure that was the best answer. And
I don't know what he's talking about.
I mean,
that was the lamest moment of the debate, I thought, other than the governor on gay marriage, but that was the lamest moment of the debate.
I think you can argue different points on how the process has gone over the last couple of years, and especially people who live in the city of Detroit who did not like emergency management. But we're now weeks away, possibly, from emerging from bankruptcy. Is this something that you will see the governor now use more on the campaign trail?
I think this is one of his strongest, one of the strongest points of his record, that he did something that I don't think we would ever have seen a Democratic governor do. It was risky, but bold. Let's zero it out. Let's stop this sort of slow, steady decline and hit rock bottom and try to sort of rocket back in the other direction. I think he's got a good story to tell there, and that people respond to that. At the same time, Mark Schauer doesn't seem to be able to wrap his mouth around an understandable alternative. I would have personally led in Detroit. What does that mean? I mean, this idea that you could have worked with the political structure in Detroit to get a bankruptcy together. I mean, that's what they tried in Vallejo, California. That's what they've tried in some of these other places. That's why those places are stuck in bankruptcies for years at a time.
And to think that he was going to personally run the city during this period, I mean, he would have had a whole state to run. I mean, the governor hired an emergency manager accountable to him. That's what a governor is supposed to do. That's what a CEO is supposed to do. And at one moment, Schauer said, "Well, I would work in Cadillac Place a couple days." The governor did work in Cadillac Place a day or two a week. He spent about 20% of his time during that crucial period on Detroit. And I mean, no governor has engaged as much in Detroit in 50 years. And it's okay. I mean, it would have been okay for Schauer to said, everything this guy's done isn't bad. He's had some successes, including, thankfully, Detroit,
but I don't think he could say that.
Well,
he could not.
I think the way to say that would have been to spin it forward, right? To say, over the next 4 years, Detroit is going to require, just like every other city in the state, a lot more investment at the state level, and we need to really examine the way we finance local government. He could have made a good case that Rick Snyder has shied from both of those issues, and that Mark Schauer would do it differently. I don't know why he didn't. I don't know why he didn't bring that up during the debate. But
all right, so going from a low point for Mark Schauer and a high point for the governor, we're going to flip it around now and talking about gay marriage. Go ahead and take a look.
I'm going to wait for the opinion to come down. That's a hypothetical, but I will respect what happens in our court system, and I think that's where the issue is going to be decided.
Where do you stand on the issue?
Well, again, I'm waiting for the outcome from the courts.
Now, his statement leads you to believe he has no position. This governor, through his own legislature, banned domestic partner benefits for gay and lesbian state employees. His tough choices are tough on all the wrong people.
I think it was also interesting that Mark Schauer said there won't be any discrimination in if I'm governor, and also equated it to an economic part to the state, that people won't want to come here and work in Michigan.
I think the anti-gay nature of our laws right now probably does hurt us. I mean, there are other states where you can go and be equal. Why would you choose Michigan? I think that sort of impassioned intonation he had about equality and anti-discrimination was the right way to answer that question. I thought the governor fell pretty flat, just saying, well, let's not prejudge the court case. But that's sort of the way he has handled all of those kinds of issues. And I wrote a column after the debate that I think that is the most significant difference between these two men in terms of the way they approach these issues. The governor will not engage that way, and I think there are a lot of voters who want the state's leader to do that. Mark Schauer will, but then can't tell you enough about, in detail, how he would get to where he wants to go.
Well, I didn't expect the governor to come out of the closet and say, yeah, I support gay marriage at this debate. He did not want that to be the headline the next day, and it would have been. But he could have had a more nuanced answer. I mean, the governor has been behind this push to expand the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to cover gays, lesbians, transgendered residents. He could have said that, and he could have said, I'm doing this because the business community thinks it's the right thing to do. It probably still wouldn't have been a great answer, but would have been a better answer than saying, well, I'm going to wait until I see what the courts say before I decide my own position
Well, and
on gay marriage.
And we've asked him about Elliot Larson a couple of times during edit boards. He's fallen flat there too. I mean, he won't come out and say what he wants. What he says is, look, the legislature needs to take that up and do what they want to do, and then I'll look at it.
But this initiative did start in his office, whether he takes
no
credit
question.
for it or not, and he could have sort of at least muted the criticism a little bit with a better answer.
All right, let's look real quick. I labeled this last piece of tape zingers. So it was just a couple things that struck out to me. Mark Schauer referred to the governor as Rick multiple times.
The whole time.
And the governor got a little angry. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Now, it is true that Rick cut. It is a fact that with Rick as governor, Rick said that was overblown.
I think it's somewhat disgusting that he's impinging on a good person's name. So this is a professional politician, again, making up stuff.
Okay, well, I have to explain that when he's talking about impinging on a good person's name, he was talking about the contract that his cousin has for office furniture in the state. But I wanted to kind of put together, so there was a little of that chippy tone there. Why would Mark Schauer refer to the governor as Rick?
We asked him that. He came in for his endorsement interview the day after the debate, and we said, well, you know, he called you congressman. Nolan and I called him congressman, and we called the governor governor. Why were you calling him Rick? He said, well, because that's how he sort of seems, right? He said, this is an informal guy who doesn't wear a tie all the time. He seems sort of folksy, so he thought that was appropriate.
Sounds like he likes you.
I wanted to say, you know, I don't think the two of you are friends, so that might not be.
I mean, that was intentional. I mean, because if it wasn't intentional, it would have happened every single time. At one point, you would have forgotten and said the governor or Governor Snyder.
Sure.
I mean, it was intentional to sort of minimize the governor's standing there. I mean, the governor is the incumbent. And so, you know, I think that was intentional. The governor, I mean, just simply
the governor
and
also to call him a politician, a career politician. Would you say now, after the governor's been in office though for 4 years, he's quite a little bit of a politician himself?
Well, he's getting better at it, but I mean, the governor has done other things in his life. Mark Schauer's always been on the public trough.
All right. Well,
what kind of statement is that? Public trough. It's public service. I mean, the idea that government service is somehow ignoble is crazy.
Nobody's saying that, but he is certainly a career politician. He's done nothing else.
All right. Okay. So, real quick, in the last couple seconds we have left on this topic, who gets the bounce from this? Who gets the momentum from this? Or does this just poof go in the air?
I don't know that there's a lot of momentum coming out of this. I think the possibility for momentum was Schauer's to turn it around. I don't really see how that performance, you know, as decent as it was, is gonna turn things in an opposite direction. I think it's a draw in terms of momentum.
Okay, what about you,
Nolan? Already had a trend line going toward the governor with a 4% poll, then a 6%, then an 8%. I didn't see anything that happens that night that would slow that trend line. I think he's going to continue to widen his lead as these weeks close.
We'll look for the next poll in the next week or so then. Okay, two other things that I want to get to before the end of the show. One, we have now an influx of big names coming to the state of Michigan campaigning. Michelle Obama, he was here, the First Lady. Now we have word that the President is going to be coming to campaign on Mark Schauer's behalf and also for Gary Peters. We had Chris Christie, who was in here campaigning on the governor's behalf also, and Mitt Romney. So
Jeb Bush here last week.
Jeb Bush. So do big names really make a big difference in local elections?
They raise money. I think you get somebody like that to show up. People get way more excited about those people than they do about sometimes about the candidates themselves, and they reach in their pocket and write checks.
It's also about turnout. You've got both Democrats and Republicans worried about turnout, worried about there's a lack of excitement about any of the candidates on this ballot, and it's showing up sort of in voter lethargy, and they're both worried about turning out their base. Bringing in Bill Clinton is a fundraising ploy, but it's also to rally the Democratic base. Bringing in the president, I assume they think they can rally some urban voters or what have you, but it's unusual because other Senate candidates across the country have been telling him to stay home. Don't come
they're
here.
in closer races.
Yeah.
Gary's not in Gary Peters is not in a close race.
So it can only make sense to rally Democrats to come out.
Democrats more excited to see the president.
All right. Finally tonight, let's take a look at Detroit's bankruptcy. City residents who oppose the bankruptcy testified this week, and there is a deal with one of the last holdout creditors, and that deal came down early this morning, Nolan, right?
Yeah, and it's it's the last major.
The last domino, right?
Yeah, I mean, so this thing's done basically. It can wrap up now. I would expect the judge will approve the plan of adjustment, and sometime in the next 2 weeks to 2 months, he's going to write his opinion, and it'll be very carefully written, not just for Detroit, but it'll probably serve as a precedent for other municipal bankruptcies across the country. That's why I wouldn't expect him to discharge it quickly. I think he's going to take his time.
Yeah, I think he will take his time, and I think we could see some changes to that plan of adjustment. There are still some real concerns about the revenue side of the projections and whether the city will have enough money to do the things that it needs to do. You may see, I mean, this is a judge who's already sent some deals back to say, look, let's get that a little more in the city's favor so that they have more cash. I wouldn't rule that out, but I do think we're on a faster track to
All right,
getting
and
out.
we will keep watching. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it so much, and thank you for watching. If you want to take a look back at the town hall, just head to our website, MiWeek.org, and plus we are always posting on social media during the week, so catch us on Facebook and on Twitter. I'm Christy McDonald. We will see you next week for My Week. Take care.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta,